So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I hope you are enjoying this week and this Congress so far. I have good news. Me and Nick, we order good weather for the next 2 or 3 days, so you will have all the conditions to profit from Amsterdam. The presidential lecture normally reflects an experience of life of the president, his passions, and also, in a word, his path. Sometimes we do it in orthopedic sports medicine, other times we do it outside orthopedic sports medicine. And my choice was to do it outside orthopedic sports medicine. Why? Because I love history, because I love the history of the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries, and because in my history, in Portuguese history, there is a period of time that was really important for us, but also with a strong impact in the world. It was the period between the 15th and the 16th century. The Portuguese put Europe together, recruit sailors and scientists, and they did the discovering period, sailing all over the world, and doing, in fact, the first world globalization. We start to reach the coast of Africa, the west coast of Africa and the east coast of Africa, turning around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, and then connecting for the first time the Atlantic with the Indian Ocean. And then we sailed to India, Ceylon, Indonesia, Malaysia, Macau and China, also to Japan, Thailand and Australia, and of course, and very important, to the coast of Brazil. Even the work of Christopher Columbus was influenced by the Portuguese nautical community. Columbus served the Portuguese crown before he went to the Spanish king, and he married a Portuguese daughter of the Porto Santo captain. So his navigation skills were due to this contact with the Portuguese. We also explored the Newfoundland in North America, and of course, the Arabian Peninsula and the island of the Indian Oceans. Fernão Magalhães was Portuguese, and he did, for the first time, the navigation through the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. Was that because there were brave sailors that want to do new things and they had the courage enough to go to the sea? We believe, and the story believes, that it was not only the case, because they had a new, modern and revolutionary mentality based on scientific methodology. They attract talents from all over the world, especially Europe, and they put together a team. Navigators, astronomers, cartographers, physicians, mathematicians, philosophers, also artists. And they were very skilled on diplomacy, international network, and also strategy for development. So, at that time, mankind in general began to gain an insight of the diversity of the globe. And the dimension of the Portuguese Empire at that time accelerate the economies in Europe, but also stimulates all the markets all over the world. And they begin a trade between all these regions that, of course, give a big influence on the modern world. It was the first time in history that a Japanese met an African met an Indian met an European, in a multiple interlacing process and with a continuous process. So we begin to understand alterity. George Orwell said at that time that it's very common to see Japanese going to the port to see for the first time a man with black skin. There are two examples of this that are very interesting and that I would like to share with you. Japan. The Portuguese arrived to Japan in 1543. They arrived to Nagasaki and Takashima. And in Takashima, the Portuguese navigator married the daughter of the governor of Takanoshima. We had influence on art and traditions. We found cities. We introduced the first firearm musket, European musket in Japan. It was a modern arm at that time. And it makes Japan control Asia because they do it very well, they replicated it, and they control Asia. There are a lot of words, Portuguese words in the Japanese language, like pan, pão, tempura, tempero, Deus o Deus, arigato, obrigado. Another interesting example of that is Australia. Probably for the great majority of you, you thought that James Cook was the first to arrive to Australia. It's clear now in history that before James Cook, the Portuguese were there, even the Dutch were there. So James Cook came later on. And we called Australia Java La Grande. And we called Java La Grande because it was bigger than Indonesia, and that was called Java. And also, we have some evidence for many years that it was the case, but historical proof just came very recently. The French Dieppe maps shows Australia since the 16th century. But the coast of Australia was not correct design. And so the arguing was, well, you see, so bad that it's not possible to say that the Portuguese were there. And then McKeegan decided to compare the latitude of the instruments of that time, the boussole at that time, with the boussole that now is used to do cartography. And the error corrected makes the correct border of Australia. So in fact, they did it well with the technology that they have at that time. There are also words of Portuguese in the Aboriginal language. And we were so close from Timor, where the Portuguese were, that it's probably not difficult to believe that we could sail 700 kilometers. Voltaire said that the Portuguese left willingly all the ignorance of those times, and then began to deserve such a glory adorable as the universe by creating the world trade, which was evidently the result of their discoveries. There is also an important contribution to the scientific development. Between the 15th and 16th century, in a few decades, the cartography, geographic, trade, navigation, astronomy, botanic, ethnology, knowledge showed an unprecedented acceleration. At that time, these guys, after analyzing all the items, did it on a scientific methodology. They contradict the science and the religious authorities at that time, and they were the groundwork of modern science. The experience in the scientific methodology was even an influence for Sir Francis Bacon. How we did it in this period? We used these kind of instruments to do the coast of Africa in the 15th century. Because trips were short, it was easy to correct the errors on the method of course and esteem, but if you do long trips, it was impossible with these instruments. So, with the same strategy, with the same vision, it was built the Sagres Nautical School by Dom Henrique that tried to develop the instruments to navigate. And we improved very much the Nautical Quadrant, and we invented the ballastilla, and also we developed more the sextant that was very important and crucial for navigation by the stars in the night. We could do it with these new instruments. And also, we were able to measure declination, what means to define the position on latitude. And latitude was crucial to come back. It was not so important to go there, but if you want to return, you know to choose the right point to do it. This is a good example of the importance of cartography with the very detailed and meticulous record of all the points of the coast. But the most important information and map in the histories of the discovery period is the Cantino planisphere. The Cantino planisphere was found by hazard by an Italian in Modena, is in Modena, in the library of Modena. He was covering a window in a butcher, and he bought it to offer to the Modena library. And the importance of this planisphere, you can imagine, this was before the Portuguese, almost nothing registered, and all the world very well designed after the Cantino planisphere. And the Cantino's planisphere is from 1502. And the Brazil was there with this detail. So, there is a huge suspicion that we knew before going to Brazil that it was there. Also because the Tordesilhas Street. But this is really a physical proof. It was almost impossible to make all these records in 2 years, bring back them to Europe, do the Cantino planisphere, and do it in 2 years. Again, important contribution on the vessels. This is the caravel. It was the one that Bartolomeu Dias go to South Africa to turn the Cape of Good Hope. Latin sails, the advantage of Latin sails is that you can sail against the wind. So without Latin sails, again, you cannot come back. And then we need bigger boats because we want to bring goods from these regions, and we develop the nau or the carack. And, of course, profiting from the knowledge of all Europe, again, all Europe together, we used the French bronze canoes that were very good quality, and our king ordered that only the royal family could do them, because they will do it with high quality, that they will not explode like many others. And we use it putting them around the boat, all around the boat, so we can make fire 360 degrees. And also we put at the level of the water. It's a completely different thing to shoot a vessel like that and try to hit it. It's not so easy. If you are at the level of the water, you put your boat on the side of the other and you don't miss the target. So it was really very important at that time. Again, a very important revolution on plants, animals. All the natural world changed. Imagine what was for an European have the contact with South America and Asia and Africa. And something that we profit today, the food revolution. All the menus and food that is popular all over the world changed in that period. We bring spices from India. We introduced banana, sugarcane, gin, and palm in Brazil. From Europe, we took wheat and vineyard. From America, food crops, corn, tomato, beans. From Asia, the rice, the tea. It was very interesting. Probably you know why the tea is called tea. It's because it was put in bags with the tea, that means for transportation. So the Asians called it tea, and that's why the word tea was born. Also important role on medicine, because we developed the scientific methodology based on rationality, and we found important hospitals all over the world. In Brazil, in Pará, in Goa, in India, in Liampio, in China, and at that time it was really very modern and very important hospitals. These institutions proved to be the main centers of contact with other cultures. And also, with this exchange of knowledge and new therapeutics, new medicinal plants, they were introduced in the Renaissance medicine in Europe by this work. So, if you look to the Portuguese map discovery and explorations in 1 century, you can see north of Africa, west coast of Africa, a lot of positions to do trade around this map. One of the characteristics of the Portuguese in this period is that we try to fight the least that we can with populations. We married with local populations, what was very typical in the Portuguese, because we are so few that we cannot conquer this territory. The only option was to make some fortress to do trade, try to increase the population, marry local people to be respected and recognized. And so the strategy was to be only on the coast. Except in Brazil, we never go in the country. And we made agreements with the king of the country in a win-win situation so that they will be happy with our presence. And you can see again the east coast of Africa, Madagascar, Mozambique, and the Arabian Peninsula, India, the island of Ceylon, and also Japan, China, and all the Asia. And what about ESCA Global Village? How ESCA is reaching the world? There are some similar things in our path. We tried to put together Europe with a common purpose, and we did affiliated societies. We have now 26 affiliated societies all over Europe. And we have a clear strategy of good relationship with international societies, with AOSSM, SLARD, APCAS, ISACOS, and all the other groups around the world. And we try to respect the territories, and we try to respect the strategy of everybody. So, with that strategy, we believe that we can have a good position in the world on a good ethical behavior. And of course, this is the fruit of that. ESCA tripled the members in 4 years, doubled the members in 2 years, and we have now more than 3,000 members from 89 countries and an important part outside Europe. And of course, this is due to a teamwork that started a long time before. Also, ESCA is connected with the world by a Portuguese. The Magellan Society is founded by godfathers and fellows from ESCA, AOSSM, APCAS, and SLARD. And this group is more or less the ESCA globalization, because these connections make the leadership in the future world. Those guys that were in those programs are today the leaders of the world in their field. And so this is really an important way of communicating, doing education, and do it on a global perspective. And as I said, it was done by many in the past. But at that time, they had smaller boats, they had worse navigation tools, but the same enormous and difficult ocean. So they are really our heroes. And the sailors, what about the sailors? The sailors today are a large group of people all around Europe that work together with the same purpose. And the teamwork is really the key of success, and especially in the ESCA. We have a very well-organized office, a professionalized office, and this made a big change in our organization. And you see very well Jana Pope leading this group. We have diffusers and traders of science, our ESCA captains. All the leaderships and responsible of all the Congress history were really the most important persons diffusing our education program. And we need to thank our local host for the excellent organization of this Congress. He is really, really a captain on this boat, and he did a very good job. We have already a good promise for Barcelona, because we are now immediately thinking about the next Congress, and we will have for sure an excellent Congress in Barcelona. We also have the cartographers of ESCA. The cartographers of ESCA are those that write the science, that control the quality of the science. On the board of trustees, Neil Thomas on the leadership, the founder of CASTA, Einar Eriksson, and the big capos, René Verdonk, Annie Madri, and the big Jon Carlson. education is really our #1 mission. And we have a huge number of fellowships. We have a huge number of publications. We have a new education online platform. And this is due for the excellent and extraordinary work of our educator, Don Pietro Randelli, the educator. Similar to the Sagro School. What about the future? What can I tell you about the future? Of course, today, SK is a larger boat. Of course, that we need good sailors, and of course, more difficulties will come to us. But we will overcome. And the future with an experienced captain on the helm is guaranteed. And it's also guaranteed if we need a captain on the air. We try to train all the team, and this is the next president of ESCA after Matteo, and we have all these skills in the board. Of course, in this moment, for me, it's important to thank, starting by my mentors. Our life has an important influence of our mentors. My father, that died with 57 years old, and was really the most influenced person in my personality. The big professor of Portugal, the most important orthopedic surgeon in our ISER, Professor Carlos Lima, that was him that invited me to be professor of orthopedics. The guilties of my ESCA path. The first guilty, Carl Peter Benedetto, that once, 14 years ago, invited me to be ESCA treasurer. He was in Porto, and he told me, well, you have a good profile to be on the board. I'm going to think about that. And I thought it was a joke, honestly. And then some weeks later, I received a fax saying that I have a board meeting, and I was already the treasurer. So I was really surprised, saying, okay, I'm there. And Neil Thomas, because of the influence that he has in the new generation of the board, because of his skills on diplomacy, his skills on relationship, and his skills as a leader. And he was really decisive to put me on the presidential line. My Porto team, those are the ones that work the most, and I have an extraordinary team. Many of them are here. I like to thank them because it's something that I'm proud. I'm proud of my team. And the family is what makes sense in your life. If you think about your family, you are smiling all the time. Thank you for your help. In our life, we need to have a vision, to dream, and to dare. But how can we concretize a dream if we don't dream? We need to be passionate for what we do. If we are passionate for what we do, the work is not hard. To respect our past values and beliefs. Rely on your family, and if you rely on your family, our life makes sense. And as scientists and clinicians, we look to things that happen and ask why. As humans and leaders, we look to things that did not happen and ask why not. Thank you.